Hey everybody, JJ here, back again with another Saturday Zoom networking for you guys. I am really excited about today's guest speaker, and today's guest speaker's topic, oh my gosh, explosive. Our guest speaker today is one of Pace Morby's young rock stars out of the Sub-2 community. And again, if you're not familiar with Pace Morby, he is the premier genius in the country at creative finance for real estate, which means in the world. Pace Morby's Sub-2 community is by far unparalleled, the best real estate education community in the country, bar none. Our guest speaker today is, just a rock star. Pace has so many young stars. As I said earlier in the promo, it's a galaxy of stars, and this young man is no exception. He started as a student, became an investor, an entrepreneur, business owner. Now he's freaking killing it in real estate. I'd like to introduce my good friend, Mr. Emeka Opara. Emeka, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here. Absolutely. Having a great time.
Man, I'm really thrilled, and your topic is explosive. It's like it's going to be gold nuggets. Really quick, for those that don't know you, where in the country you located?
I am currently located in the New York area, originally from the DMV. So if anybody who's not from the East Coast, that's the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So was born and raised there. Now I feel like I'm, all over the place though, right? Because we're doing deals in a lot of markets, and it's good to have other areas that you're working on. It makes those places feel like home as well. So
Yeah, you're all over the country. Where are you not doing deals more than where you doing deals? But
right, where we not doing deals? Honestly, we're doing deals everywhere. If there's a good opportunity and a way for us to help somebody, to partner on something, then we're always interested.
what are some of your primary markets?
Primary markets, right now we're in Austin, Texas. Texas has been really good to us.
Hot market.
Very hot market, right? Some of the tertiary markets there outside the DFW area. Also in Florida, Tampa, Jacksonville, really hot markets there as well. And then, of course, we do a lot of stuff in our backyard as well in the DMV area, a lot of buy and holds and looking for creative opportunities there as well. So
I'm hearing more about DMV all the time. In California, in California, DMV is Department of Motor Vehicles. So,
right.
DMV, what is this DMV? What is DMV?
Right.
But yeah, it's the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia area. What I wanted to talk about in a minute before we get into real estate is really talk about you. I've had the pleasure to meet you in person, and it just really impressed me is just your heart, your personality. I mean, you are one of the most genuine, lovable people. Your smile just lights up a room. You are truly a freaking beautiful person, man. I freaking love you.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. You as well.
Let me ask you about, we all start in different ways. We all start our journey in real estate in a different path. Let me talk about the years where we're, I'll just say, going from our teens to adulthood, so to speak. We're 16 and we're driving, we're 18 and we're voting, we're 21 and we get to go buy a bottle of beer in a bar or something. In your teens, what were you doing as far as school, academics, sports, whatever? And was real estate on the horizon for you? And maybe leading into your secondary education, were you at all in having real estate on the horizon, or what were you doing in those years?
Oh man, no, not at all. Those years I was just a goofy kid, honestly. I think real estate was something that kind of solidified for me at the end of my college years. Going into college, I was familiar with it, had some ideas about possibly owning properties or something in the future, but never really nailed down as far as got focused on it and, really looked at that as a potential pathway for a future. So,
Let me ask you something, because we touched on this a little bit. You were into sports in school, right? You were playing ball.
yeah.
A little bit about that.
Yeah, man, I was an athlete. I was an athlete and a student. for most of my life. I played a lot of sports growing up, football. I played soccer, ran track, did a lot of different things. In high school, football was my main game. And so, back then I was just focusing on being a goofy kid and playing ball, trying to, go play college ball, find, a good school to go to. I ended up going to school in Cleveland at Case Western, playing ball there for a couple of years as well. And so back then, all I was really concerned about was trying to get some good grades, not screw up too much outside of school, as I was a lot at the time, and just playing sports. Really, it wasn't really anything more serious than that for me.
I'll tell you, man, your academic background. I just got my business, my regular business degree, but
Right.
science is something else, man. No, you're really impressive. So now let me ask you. So when you got out of college, were you actually doing the science thing? Were you doing the engineering out of college?
Yeah, yeah. So I got a job as a systems engineer for an automation company, um, doing a lot of like programming and like coding, like industrial projects and stuff like that. Kind of took that into consulting for the same thing. And that was kind of when my real estate career started kind of to kick off. And started taking it more seriously, started getting more interested into it. I think my real estate journey, we started kind of getting interested at the end of college. And then after college, when I was working, is when I really went full throttle with it with my partner.
Now let's chat a little bit about your partner. Uh,
Mhm.
we chatted the other day a little bit. Now, your current partner you met while you were in college.
Yeah, yeah. We were from the same area. If anybody's familiar with the Cleveland area at that time, being from DC, Maryland, you kind of just resonate with people that are from the same place, and automatically, we stand out. So we were friends in college, and we were fraternity brothers as well. And then at the same time, when I was graduating and he was still in school, we were both interested in real estate at the same time. He started to go full throttle with it a little bit before I did. And then once I started to do some more research and figure out what was for me, it was just natural for us to kind of join forces and get things going.
Now, when you guys got out of college or yourself, you're already kind of dabbling in real estate. Let's just like fast forward here a little bit. How many years between, say, when you in the workforce and you're getting into real estate? How long was it till you got into finding out about Sub Two and Pace Morby? I mean, that's kind of where you and I met.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, sub two is where things really kicked off for us. Before then, we had done deals. We were wholesaling in the DMV area. Um, you know, kind of just really finding our way through it. As young guys that are, self-taught, you're going through a YouTube university, you're going through different, mentors here and there, joining different mentorship programs to trying to learn while you're failing forward. And so I think it was about 2 years after I graduated college, when we really started to get interested and started doing some recon and some front end research about it. And then I think about a year, I've been in sub two for about 2.5, 3 years now, right when it basically first started. And we were in the business so roughly about a year beforehand, really just finding our way through wholesaling, really, trying to cold call and do deals ourselves. We were lucky enough to do a couple. And then once we got into sub two, things really started to make more sense about what opportunities there really were in the real estate industry, besides just wholesaling.
I know when I started Sub Two a couple of years ago, part of the way things were laid out was that one looks at the acquisition manager, the Dispo manager, transaction coordinator, integrator, and visionary. Since
Right.
they've expanded that to include the avatar uh, group, or the avatar handles. When you got on, I guess you guys are kind of working together. You know, were each of you doing everything, or did you guys decide he's going to do this, you're going to do that? what did you, how did you find what you were comfortable with? What was that like? I mean, for those that are watching right now that are newer investors and they're trying to find their path, maybe they're new substitute students trying to find their path.
Mhm.
How did you feel or figure out what was good fit for you, and having a partner walking in there? How did you guys kind of, you know, discover the lay of the land?
Yeah, man. So definitely when you first get started in a business, you want to do everything. You want to do everything. You want to, you know, try to bang out all tasks at the same time. And we didn't really have a lot of structure and organization in how we were doing that. We're overlapping in a lot of responsibilities, and things were getting a little disorganized. When we decided to assign and kind of get roles in the business, I think that's when things started to clear up a little bit more. And it's more so just working to the strengths of each person. When you partner with somebody, obviously we all bring different personalities, we bring different strengths to the table of how we operate. And a good partnership is just about acknowledging that, and not trying to shy away from that. Know what you're good at, know what your capabilities are and where your potential lies, right? And then move closer into that role and find somebody that complements that. And I think that's one of the things we really learned coming into sub two, is that you don't have to be the person that's a super closer that can get anybody under contract, or that knows how to structure every type of deal. There's still ways to make money in this business in a lot of different other avatars, things that people would never expect. And the more that we kind of define that, and more we kind of went into our own, you know, roles that we're comfortable with, start to really clarify things as far as the business goes.
Now we're going to be talking about Dispo today. Dispo is your topic, but
Right.
how did that happen for you? How did you decide that was what you were comfortable with, or that's where you wanted to go? How did that come about for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was just like, I think, when people talk to me, they know I'm easy to talk to. I'm a good communicator. I was just really never that so infatuated with being on the phones all the time, and trying to close a seller. Um, I wanted more dealing with the back end of deals and making sure they're closing, making sure we're building connections on that end. And even though there's similarities, of course, like when you're dealing with a buyer versus a seller, you're essentially still closing somebody and getting them to the finish line. I just enjoyed that part of the deal, like talking to a buyer, getting to understand who they are, that connection building a little bit more. And then naturally, as more of an operations, mindset type person, um, coming into the back end of a deal for Dispo and transactions just made the most sense, right? Because it was something I was typically used to doing on a daily basis, anyways.
Awesome. Now we've got your partner on the call, I think, right now. So okay if we bring him on with us?
Yeah, yeah, bring him on, man. If Odo's out there, man, bring him on here if he's available.
So now you guys have known one another for a minute, as they say, huh?
A, mi-
Oh yeah, a couple of minutes.
a minute, as they say, right?
So now you're also from the DMV area, as I understand. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Cool, cool. And of course, you and I have met. You've been a guest speaker here with us before as well, so it's good to see you again. Um, so when you guys got going into real estate, you know, was that a smooth process when you guys got into Sub 2? Were you guys kind of looking at a lot of different aspects? I know Pace talked about shiny object syndrome to some extent. Did things fall in pretty quick, or did you guys still kind of have? What was it like trying to figure out who's going to handle what?
Oh, it was a fail forward process for sure. There were some smooth parts, but there was um, a lot of rough patches too. And I think that just goes with anything, right? Especially if you're super dedicated to something. Just trying out different aspects of the business, and sometimes we were stepping on each other's toes, but it just allowed us to really identify our strong suit, because we both test really close on the integrator visionary for disc tests and other things like that. So it was good for us to have that experience and learn more about each other, even though we worked a lot together in college.
Well, I see you're driving. I don't want to detract from me too much, but what were some of the challenges, maybe for both of you guys? What were some of the challenges that you guys were faced in having a partner, and what were some of the benefits?
For me, I think it was communication. Like I had to really better at communicating and understanding how, how other people communicate different things. And it was a learning experience, like growing and doing deals together and learning, hey, like we both know we're good at stuff, but then learning what is this person best at and how can I support them to give them the best resources, and then communicating that was the biggest thing for me. And I think once I learned how to do that better with my guy here, it really opened things up for us.
Yeah, I think
Great.
ultimately, like, you come into a partnership not really knowing what to expect at all levels. You know that you guys gel on a certain point and you work well together. And then as you go through more challenges and more experiences in the business, you learn different things about how to be more efficient, how to work better as a team. And a lot of the things you don't really learn until you're in the mix of it, right? Like there's not a lot of stuff that prepares you for that rather than actually doing it, going through it, doing deals, having successes, having failures. And so I think a lot of it for us was, just understanding that this is a process, right? And, you're constantly learning. You're constantly learning how to work with one another, constantly learning how to improve, even just like in a marriage. People look at a marriage as, you know, for death do us part or whatever, right? So when you get married, it's not just you get married. I mean, I'm not married yet, but I assume that when you get married, that it's constant work, right? Sometimes your wife is, pisses you off a little bit and you guys have to make up and do a little things, right? Sometimes you get a little annoying to her and you got to, switch things up. So it's a constant work in progress. And partnerships are just a similar thing, like the business marriages. So yeah, it operates no different. So
And one last thing I want to throw in, like we had an advantage, right? Like we had already worked together in the fraternity. He was president. He taught me how to be president. And so we had that advantage. So don't just jump into a partnership and hope you figure it out. Like have some background with the person for sure.
right,
Love that, bro.
absolutely.
Thank you. Olu, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. So, Emeka, let's move into Dispo.
Oh
For
yes.
for people that aren't aware of the topic, maybe they're a brand new investor, they're a new student, maybe they're not even in an education program yet. What is Dispo?
So Dispo is basically matching your deal to an end buyer, right? Essentially, when somebody says that they closed the deal and they finally get paid and it's signed, sealed, and delivered, that means that they efficiently disposed a deal and matched a buyer to a deal that they had locked up on the contract. And so that's what I like to do. That's what I like to specialize in. Essentially, is just finding ways to help people close deals, no matter what type of deal it is. So,
And of course, Dispo is an abbreviation for disposition.
absolutely, yeah.
Um, I hear all the time people talk about putting their buyers list together, their sellers list together. So when one is, working with Dispo, is it something where you've already got your buyers list together? Yes, you know where your buyers are per state. Is that part of what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about always making a constant effort to reach out and build those relationships. This is a relationship-based business in general, right? How we close contracts with sellers, how we work with, agents and other team members, joint venture partners. Same thing with buyers as well. You want to constantly be building relationships and building up that Rolodex of people that are interested in looking for deals. And essentially, when you go into a market that you want to make your prevalent market, the best thing to do is to maximize or 10x all of your outreach to find those type of connections and people that were going to be interested in deals that you have, and then see what's the best way you guys can get a deal going, what type of synergy you guys have.
Now, we're talking about all things Dispo. What are some of the various aspects maybe some of the newer investors might not be aware of, other than just finding a buyer? You know, again, as you made the comment, we're going to talk about all things Dispo. What are some of the other aspects that we can look at?
Yeah, I think one thing that people don't understand about Dispo sometimes is that, you are really, it's not just about finding a buyer, it's making sure that the deal gets closed appropriately and that the seller is pleased with how how everything's ended. You basically are taking on the latter half responsibility into making sure the performance of your team is in a good position and that everything is closing the way it should. And a lot of that isn't just finding a buyer. A lot of that is coordinating with, back with acquisitions. If you need more details from about the property, or coordinating with people on the ground and the seller as well to get access to the properties, and maybe even talking to the county offices or people in the local governments to get details on taxes or zoning, different items like that. None of it, I would say, is too complex that anybody can do, but with any task in the business, it takes hard work and consistency to, see a real success story from it, right? So I would say, you know, there's a little bit more involved on making sure your responsibility is bringing that deal to the finish line, and then also coordinating with the closing companies and people on the latter half of the deal to make sure that everything is done legally and in the right way.
So when you're focusing on when one is focusing on Dispo, you're also interacting with, say, escrow and title.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So like a lot of times how we break it down is we have dispo and transactions, right? On the front end of the deal, you may have lead generation and acquisitions. All four of those people work together, of course, in one team, but the former or the earlier two portions, the lead generation acquisitions, they probably work a little bit closely together, just like how dispo and transaction coordination work together, right? Transaction coordination, essentially, you're the person that makes sure that everything is right, with the title companies, the attorneys, paperwork, deadlines, updates. Everybody's informed about the process. You're the coordinator, almost like a project manager, right? To make sure everything goes smoothly. And naturally, you're going to be working really closely in tandem with the person that's trying to close the deal, right? Trying to bring a buyer to the table, trying to make sure that access to the property is done correctly, that everybody's had a chance to view it, make sure that the offer comes in, the paperwork is signed, passed off to the title company. So, there is a transaction coordination piece of that isn't exactly Dispo, but a lot of times we work so close in tandem that you have an experience understanding what that part of the business is as well.
No, in closing a deal, obviously, and of course, you just made mention that there's a great deal of coordination with the transaction coordinator. Mm-hmm. And again, we've got some new people on the call or new people watching on YouTube right now. For those that aren't aware, they haven't, maybe been through Pace's community or involved with Pace's community. What's a transaction coordinator? And you touched on it a little bit, but could you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So like I said, I would kind of compare it to the project manager of the team, right? So if you look at the life cycle of a deal as almost like a conveyor belt or a process on an assembly line, right? You get the deal that comes in from marketing or lead generation, that gets pushed off to the team to negotiate with the seller to get it under contract, something that makes sense. That's in the acquisitions department, right? Acquisitions is getting it locked up, getting details from the seller, building that rapport and that relationship, making the seller feel comfortable about the deal. Next phase in the process line, we're passing it off to disposition. They're basically making sure that we're closing, we have a buyer, everything as far as what's needed to close on a property is accounted for. And then you have the transaction coordinator, who's basically overseeing almost each step of that process to make sure that we have the paperwork, to make sure that we have the deadlines, to make sure communication doesn't fall off between all parties, right? To make sure that the escrow process with the title company and the attorneys has been started and there's no issues there. And ultimately to oversee everything to make sure that when somebody comes into the closing appointment to sign for the property, that everything is signed, sealed, and delivered, that it's all good to go. And that's a very, very vital, important part of the business as well, because you'd be surprised. A lot of deals fall by the wayside just because of transaction coordination, or, they don't know the process of how to talk to a title company. They don't know how to check in for certain updates or what paperwork is needed. So that's a very important part as well.
So, and we have a buyer and a seller. We have an acquisition team talking to the seller and talking to the buyer. And from that aspect of the buyer, seller, the outside people that we're dealing with, acquisitions and Dispo are very visible. Trying to fill in the gap here, that the transaction coordinator handles a lot of the behind the scene details. And as soon as a project becomes live, for lack of a better word, they're sort of picking up the project, making sure everything is in place so that can move forward. As that proceeds and is now acquired and acquisitions is no longer in the mix, it's now in the Dispo stage, that transaction coordinator continues with the coordination of the project, as you're saying, project manager, and is the transition to the Dispo manager, to where the Dispo manager is interfacing with the buyer. And then in the closing end of that, the transaction coordinator works with, I don't want to say assists, but works with the Dispo manager to then finalize and close that transaction. Is that a pretty fair assessment?
Yeah. And I think the biggest point of that is just having somebody to check off the boxes, right? You want to have somebody in place to run things by. Like if you're a closer, right? You want to run by the contract and paperwork with your transaction coordinator to make sure you're not missing anything when you go back and talk to the seller to get it locked up. If you're a Dispo guy, you're getting in touch with your transaction coordinator to make sure that they know about the appointments that are scheduled. They know that the EMD deposit from the buyer has been put in at the title company. You're going over the paperwork with them for the new buyer that's coming in. So just that guy that's going to be behind the scenes, making sure that everything is checked off and done efficiently.
Of course, having an efficient, experienced transaction coordinator makes your job in Dispo much easier. But still, for the newer investor, is there anything in particular one needs to look out for?
For transaction coordinators?
Well, this as far as Dispo, as far as being in charge of the disposition of the property, is it just I guess part of it's being in really good tandem with your TC, with your transaction coordinator. But from your experience in history, and not that you made any mistakes. We all have a mistake here or there. But from your journey and your experience, is there something in particular you think that the newer investors need to be aware of as they're working through Dispo?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is attention to detail and transparency. Those two are the biggest things I've learned on the Dispo side of the business. Attention to detail being that when you are marketing a deal or talking to a buyer about a deal, you're going to get a lot of questions, things asked you about the property, people who, may be interested, may not be interested. The best thing at that point is know your deal, know what you're marketing. If you have to get more details from the seller beforehand or from the acquisitions team about what's going, what the state of the property is, do that. Because ultimately you're putting your best pitch forward to somebody else of to why they should want to buy this deal, right? What they're looking for, or their buy box, or their criteria is going to be what sparks their initial interest, right? What brings them to the table. But what closes them is how you sell that deal and how you make them feel comfortable about that decision, right? So that's one thing. And the transparency piece goes along with that, because nobody likes the shady car salesman that's trying to sell them, a 68 Mustang, which the engine doesn't run. Like, it looks good on the outside, but the guts are terrible, right? So just being transparent and understanding that you are focusing on building a relationship with these buyers, right? A reproducible relationship, right? Because if they buy one deal, you want them to buy 2 deals, you want them to buy 3 deals, right? And so if you're being transparent with them and honest about what the property is, what the potential they have to generate income from it, they're going to respect that more than you trying to tell them what they want to hear.
Felicia, you are on with Emeka Opara. What's your question?
Okay, Emeka, I wanted to ask you, how do you get your first buyer? And then also, when you have that first buyer, someone I've heard said that if you get the right buyer, you don't need any more. But so how does your business work also? That's the second question as far as buyers.
Right. Great question. Thank you
Okay.
for asking.
You're welcome.
How did we find our first buyer? Guys, honestly, one thing I think is a big misconception about the business is that it is, for somebody who's new or may not have started, that you have to have all the knowledge in the world to make some of these decisions, to find a buyer, to get a fat check from a deal, any of these things. Honestly, the best way to find your first buyer, and maybe it's your first deal, you just got a seller who's interested in selling their property. In my experience, the fastest and best ways have been either to joint venture with a investor who is already doing deals in that same market, right? Or for one, also partner with an agent, possibly from one of those comps that you use to even analyze your deal. That's one thing that people don't realize, right? When you're going into a deal, whether it's a wholesale deal, whatever the case may be, one of the early stages in getting that deal locked up is analyzing the numbers, right? Everybody has to analyze numbers to make sure it's a deal for them, make sure it works, make sure they're going to make money from it. In doing that, a lot of times you are going to be looking at comparables or similar properties in the area that have sold, that you're kind of, basing your numbers off of and getting that average to kind of see where you are. Those comparables, those are your buyers, right? Because you think about it, those deals that are selling in those areas, somebody's picking them up, right? They're either working through an agent, they're either buying them themselves, but they're interested in that area, right? And so maybe you don't know how to pull a list and skip them, right? Maybe you're not exactly sure, you don't have the funding to run a marketing campaign where you're cold calling and texting buyers. Well, the easiest way that I've seen is I've gone on Facebook, I've joined, an investment group, even something similar to a group like this, and just put out there like, hey, I got a deal that I'm looking to sell. I think the numbers work well. Looking for some other experienced investors in the area who possibly want to, JV and make some money. And that's the first way. And if you're somebody that's a little bit more savvy about the business and you understand, the market, and as far as agents and working with comparables or comps in the area, we've found some of the easiest buyers just by calling the agent that sold a property down the street and saying, hey, like, we have a deal right around the corner that's for sale. It looks like it's a pretty good numbers, and maybe even better than the one that I see you sold a couple months ago. Maybe you have somebody interested in looking for another deal, or maybe somebody that'd be willing to pick up another one down the block, right? And so these are two cheap, easy, simple ways to find people who are interested in buying the deal. No money out your own pocket, barely any time spent, right? And if it's a good deal, a lot of times people say it will sell itself. And A lot of times it will with these two types of methods, right? Somebody's going to see that there's an opportunity there, and it's going to want to work with you on that. And to answer your second question, you know, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if you find a buyer that is a vetted buyer, they perform well, you can trust them, right? You know that they're going to buy a certain amount of deals every month. Then essentially, you could be doing just be that consistent person that brings them deals every month, right? The only thing I'll say to that is that a lot of times we have to think about it like this. We are business owners, right? And if we're going to be focusing on scaling our business, right, we don't want that to be dependent on one person or somebody else's business, right? So in the case that something may go wrong with that buyer, maybe that buyer has some personal issues, family issues, maybe they've done buying for this year, right? Our business can't stop, right? So our job is to find more of those people that are going to perform in that manner and build up a database or a Rolodex of them so that in any situation that comes up, whether one of our buyers is sick or one of our buyers is on vacation or they're low on cash, whatever the case may be, we have a way to close that deal. But yeah, I mean, especially if you're starting out and you're only hoping to do a couple deals every month, if you find that one investor that you can partner with that is buying that many deals per month, you essentially, you're in the game. Now, as far as when you start to scale up, you just start looking for more people.
Melissa Butts, you are on with Emeka Opara. What's your question?
Hi, Emeka. Good to see you. Glad to meet
good
you.
to see you as well. Good to see you as well.
I got a question in regards to your team. Who handles the property if there's any liens on it? Would that be you as the Dispo, or would that be the transactional coordinator?
That's a very good question. So typically what we do is that when we find out that a property has liens on it, either from learning from the seller, right? Sometimes the seller will be upfront with you and let you know, hey, I have these notes that are on the property. Just to let you know, you may want to factor this into the price. We get that from the acquisitions team, and the Dispo person will communicate that information to the buyer so they're aware of that. A lot of times the sellers don't know what liens are on the property, right? And so a lot of that information is going to come from the title company when they do the lien search and start, doing the background information checking on that property and that seller. And at that point, that information will probably come back to your team from the transaction coordinator, because they're going to be the person, that liaison that's coordinating the information from the title company back to the team.
Okay. Can I ask at that point, how do you handle it in regards to just passing on? Let's say there's a $10,000 lien on a property. Is that something you just pass on to your end buyer, or is that something that you guys take care of and then at the closing table, settle out at that point?
That's a great question. Honestly, it's on a deal by deal basis. It really depends, because ultimately we want our end goal to be a closed deal that works for everyone, right? The seller's happy, buyer's happy, we're happy. And this is, again, where the transparency part comes into play, because if we have an agreement with the seller under a certain purchase price for numbers that work for them and work for us, right? Obviously, when we go to the closing table and the title company says, hey, there's a $15,000 lien here that you guys weren't talking about, where's that money going to come from? Now the numbers have changed, right? Adding $15,000 for us to account for, or for the buyer to account for, may not work for them anymore, right? So what we typically do at that point, we'll go back to the seller. We'll let them know, like, hey, this is the information that came back from the title company. Understanding that we initially were at these numbers, this is where we need to be now, right? And we start to work out negotiations with them at that point in time to see what works out best for everybody. Sometimes the end buyer is okay with taking on some of that expense, right? Sometimes they'll be like, you know what? This property is at such a good number. add the 10,000 on there. I'm still going to make my money. I don't care. That's not all the time, right? Because most of the time when they go for a certain number, they want that certain number. But you be transparent. You go back to them. You let them know, like, listen, like this came up. We weren't expecting this at all. Work with me a little bit. And ultimately, with closers like the people that we have on our team and how we build rapport initially with the seller, it's typically not an issue, right? Because you're going back to them as a friend. And also like when you're doing deals, you want to look at it as a partnership with that seller, right? Because you're helping that seller get paid. In return, you're helping your team do a deal, right? We're looking out for each other's best interest, because ultimately, if I'm not looking out for your best interest, you're not going to feel comfortable selling to me or working with me at all, right?
Yep.
So when you go back to the seller after finding out this information about the lien, you just say, hey, Tom, Tim, listen, man, I know we were talking earlier about coming to the table with this amount of money. This $15,000 really puts a little bit of a wrench in our plans, but we're still here, man. We want to figure out how to help you move to your new house. So what can we do numbers wise? What can we compromise on? Maybe you take half, I take half. If you can do the full 15, even better, right? But you work with each other like that. And if you build rapport the right way with the seller, you typically aren't going to run into any issues. Yeah, it's on a deal by deal basis, but for the most part, it's just about being transparent with everybody and letting them know where you're at with the deal.
Mike, on that same note, it just seems to me that if a property's for sale, seller wants a certain price, and then something comes up and that property, I'll just use the word is compromised, there's a lien,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like the buyer should have to pick up that extra price.
Mm-hmm.
If the seller took care of what they were supposed to take care of up front, there wouldn't be a lien.
Right.
So it seems like that lien should come
Right.
from the seller, but obviously they want their price.
Yeah. A lot of times, man, we've had deals where we've done everything the seller's asked, we've agreed to everything, and then they like their price, and you come back and you find out there's $30,000 worth of liens on there, and then you go back to them and they say, "Oh, yeah, I forgot about that, but I still want my money." And it's like, well, this is realistically what needs to happen here. Ultimately, this is where we're at. We are very transparent with you about how we ran our numbers, where we needed to be. This puts us at a very difficult position. So understanding that we want to get this done, we have everything in place. Work with me. Let's work together to get something done here. And sometimes if you have a good buyer that you've built good rapport with, that can take a couple losses or take a couple $1,000s of a hit, they may say, "Hey, I'll take a little bit of that. I don't mind that lien. I'll take it over." But that's not going to be every buyer, right? There's for the most part, they're going to want to stick to the numbers that you presented them with, because that's what they base their deal off of.
Yeah, and again, to me, I've not incurred that yet. So it just seems to me that I would want to talk to the seller and say, that's something they should consider working into their own numbers. Justin Kremer, you are on with Emeka Opara. What's your question?
Hey, Emeka, JJ, thank you guys both for doing this. This is awesome. So this is actually kind of a two-part question. The first part is, what's your favorite way of finding, like your personal favorite way of finding buyers?
Great question.
And two, one of the big parts of networking is maintaining the relationship, right? And I heard you mention something briefly about maintaining that buyer relationship. What does that look like for you guys? What does maintaining that relationship with the buyers look like for you guys?
Ooh, perfect. Great questions. First and foremost, what is my favorite way of finding a buyer? Ooh, I think honestly, I like the way of working through the agents. Sometimes I feel like it's almost like a 2-for-1, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's like, you're hitting double time for every chip you play. So, and the reason why that is because when you're an off-market investor, and especially if you're new to the game, a lot of times you may hear that it's hard to work with agents. Sometimes they're difficult. They don't understand the business, yada, 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 all these things. Ultimately, what that means to me is that you just haven't found that person where you can build a relationship with.
Right.
Because we've had some of our biggest deals and most successful deals come on an off-market basis from working with agents. One, because you get them paid as well. They almost act as a second disposition manager slash transaction coordinator because they're bringing a client to the table that trusts them, right? And so you almost don't even have to do as much work on the building rapport piece because you have somebody that's going to vouch for you, right? When they get paid, it's almost a 2-for-1. You now have a buyer that you've sold a deal to, and you have an agent
That's
that
great.
possibly has other deals that you can either help them out with, or even other buyers they can bring to the table for you.
Love it.
Not to mention if you want an agent to list a property for you as well.
Right.
You know, we have so many, good relationships with people that we've built just from helping them find a deal. And now they're either bringing more deals to us, they list the property for us. Um, you know, they're able to sometimes even talk to the seller to let them understand, like, hey, I'm an agent working with these guys is going to be the best route. There's just a plethora of ways to kind of spin that situation.
Yeah.
And I think if you find a good partnership like that with an agent, that's always the best. I like the
Yeah,
most.
that's
It's
all. I
almost like,
love that.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
that.
And then on the on keeping rapport piece, there's so many ways to do it. The biggest thing you want to focus on is that, hey, if I am, it's almost like you're dating somebody, right? You go on a first good date with somebody, you like them, you guys hit it off a little bit.
Mhm.
How do you keep those juices flowing? How do you keep that, that fire going? You stay in consistent communication. Um, you guys make sure that you're either meeting or going out again after that point. And it's the same thing with a buyer, right? You maybe you send them a deal and they don't close on it or it doesn't work out for them, but you vetted them out a lot and you know that they're a good buyer or somebody that you definitely want to work with in the future.
Mhm.
You put them on follow-up campaigns. You make sure that you're touching up with them every week.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I don't got a deal for you right now, but what are you looking for, man? What's hot for you right now? Like, what's going on in your business? You talk to them about stuff, about how their own businesses are going, how you can help them out. Be transparent about where you are in your business. And a lot of times you get people that now become friends of yours that are buyers, who understand what they're looking for and what value you provide for them. And another way is that if you're somebody that's, further along into scaling your business, you maybe have VIP buyers or people that are consistently performing, do something nice for them. You got guys that are, constantly bidding on your deals and maybe even constantly buying those deals. Send them a gift basket for the holidays, or, take them out to dinner once a year, throw them a party or something like that. That's how you really get people bought into the idea that you're there to serve them and there to help them out. And when you do that for your buyers and you talk to them on a consistent basis, it's almost like they're part of your own team, right? And your best buyers are going to know who you are personally. They're going to know who your partners are, who your dispo and acquisition managers are. They're going to know your number by heart. So when you call every time per week, they'll say, hey, JJ, what's going on, man? What you got for me today? And, what deals you got in the pipeline? Or they'll hit you up before you even call them. Say, hey, I'm in the area. Let's get dinner. What you got on the table for us to talk about? And that just comes from the consistent follow-up and communication, and then also giving them deals, right? Everybody's an investor. Nobody always has the amount of time to just talk. Bring something to the table to talk about that's actually going to be an opportunity for them.
Oh, that's good. I like that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, thank you, man. I
absolutely.
really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Emeka, what I really, the follow up is huge.
Yeah.
Follow-up's huge. But as you mentioned that again, I just wanted to point that out, how the obvious follow up is going to be important. We're going to bring a young lady on, but before we do, a couple of the questions I just saw right here. Back to liens. If a contract it says, can the contract be canceled if the lien can't be paid or negotiated on?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything, when we do our contracts, and for most real estate contracts in general, when you make an agreement, it's based on that purchase price that you agreed upon, right? So if me and JJ's the seller, I'm the buyer, I'm signing on the paperwork, the contract, I'm buying it for $100,000. We go to the title company. That contract that we submit is going to be contingent upon that lien review, right? So we don't close, we don't bring any money to the table until we see that there's clear title, right? Clear title just means that there's nothing restricting the seller from transferring title or transferring the deed to you. We're going to make sure that there's no liens that are going to be called due when we take this property over. So if we go to the title company and I find out, hey, JJ has $50,000 in water liens or all this other stuff, if we can't come to an agreement of how to, deal with that funds or where that's going to come out from, then we have the opportunity to back out of the contract or to renegotiate, whatever the case may be. Because of course, when you talk to a title agent or a title attorney who's going to be closing the deal, they just look at it as a balance sheet for numbers. They have 100,000. This amount goes to this. This goes to this. There's $50,000 here that's not accounted for. Where is it going to come from? You got to tell them where that comes from.
So we hear about the contingency period frequently, and what that falls into. That you've got so many days to have your inspector review the property and make sure the roof is good, make sure certain things are adequate. And within that contingency period, there's also a search for liens by the title company.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah.
Cynthia Ware, young lady, you are on with Mr. Emeka Opara. What's your question?
Hi. I want to first say hello. I came in late, and so I hope my question is not boring to anyone because I'm late. I always thank you, JJ, for the platform, and Emeka. I wish I was here earlier, but what I've heard thus far, I really wish I was here earlier. But anyway, being here in this real estate investment space, this industry. I don't care what nobody say. They say this is easy. This ain't easy.
No.
You just got to wear too many hats. You got too many. You're like an octopus with so many hands. It constantly got to be working at some kind of strategy towards getting it. So the question that I have is, how many people versus it within your team, and then how did that team get developed? Because I'm just not seeing that being done easy, quickly.
Right. So, and first thing is, I'll comment on that statement is that it's definitely not easy, right? I think when people say that, they mean to say that it's simple enough, but it's not easy, right? Some of the simplest things can be hard, right? You think about, I need to go cut down this tree in the backyard, right? All you got to do is cut it at the trunk, right? We know how to cut it down, but you still have to apply that energy and all that force to cut the tree down, right? It's hard.
Depends on how big it is.
Depends on how big it is, right?
It may not be. But we dealing it from the trunk. We may be having somebody climb in the tree.
Exactly. So, so there's it's just once you start in the business, a lot of things are going to be spinning all over the place. You're going to see a lot of shining objects, creative, buy and hold, wraps. Everybody's going to be throwing all these lending, Gator, all these ways to make money, and they all work. All these strategies work. It's about finding what fits best for you, your team, and how you want to grow your business. And that's a difficult part, right? Because you have to understand your trajectory of where you want to go. You may not fully understand how to get there, but you have to, understand what you want to be able to accomplish. Now, from a team perspective, we were doing deals when it was just myself and my partner. It was a two-man team, right? Okay. Even if it's a one-man team, you wear more hats, of course, right? You have to do more. You have to do lead gen, acquisitions, dispo, transactions, networking, You have to do all that yourself. But the way to get it done and to scale from that point is honestly two things. Document everything you do, right? If you're starting off by one person and you're only calling, 5 to 10 people a day, you're researching properties, document how you're doing every single one of those processes, right? Because at some point, that role is going to be somebody else's, right? And you never know how fast that's going to come. Sometimes that may come after your first deal. You may go into your first deal, make $20,000, and now you have the means to hire a VA to do the work that you were just doing to make that $20,000, right? And so documentation is everything, because if you have standard operating procedures, if you have ways of systemizing your business that other people can follow, then it's easier to bring somebody on to take the place to free up more time for you to do something else. So when we first started, like I said, we were doing everything. And when we got to the point where we were doing a deal or two to be able to hire a VA to maybe do some cold calling for us, do some dispositions for us, the first thing that we did was we documented our processes of what we were doing on a daily basis, all of our daily tasks. And we said, all right, this is going to be the starting point for that new employee or that new person that we're going to partner with. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be an employee or VA. Sometimes it could be a joint venture partner, right? We talk about sub two a lot. There's so many different people from different backgrounds that are joining the community that are being successful in whatever walk of life they are, right? You have sometimes maybe you're brand new and you just want to joint venture and hop on somebody's team because you want to learn how to get a deal. Well, if I'm that person that you're hopping onto my team, the best way I can help you is providing you a pathway of how I know how to get a deal. And that is going to be documented. I can pass it off to you. And now you're helping me by taking care of that. And I can focus on something else to grow my business. So documentation is very, very important. And then number two, how we were able to grow the team is just honestly by networking and getting into more spaces for the type of deals and the type of business that we wanted to build. When we started going to the mastermind, connecting more people in the communities that we were joining, we were realizing that a lot of us make a lot of the same mistakes when we get started, right? We all try to maybe cold call buyers, do all this stuff at the same time. And when you start to network a little bit more, you pick up things where it's like, oh, JJ did that a month ago, and we're at the same point in our business right now. Maybe we need to make an adjustment so we don't go through the same thing that he just did, right? And then on top of that, maybe I bring a deal to him so he can help us get this closed and explain to us how this process is supposed to be done, right? So, and what happens from there? One, I get a deal closed. I get a new, JV partner or somebody I can work with. And also I get a new process that I can document and give to my team. And so now they understand how to do this part of the business. And so that's how it started. It's very, it wasn't quick. It definitely just started by failing forward and taking chances. Even when I didn't know exactly what the outcome was going to be, I knew that it was going to put me in a direction where I was going to learn something about the business that would be more beneficial in the future. That's honestly like probably the third and almost most important part. It's just like fail forward. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to start. If you're brand new, right, and you don't know how to get your first deal, or you're cold calling, or you're looking at certain opportunities, continue to do that, but don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to network with people who you may be able to help them get a deal and in turn learn something. Mm-hmm. And so that's how it really helped for us. Like, we went from a 2-man team. Go ahead.
2 questions. Mm-hmm. How did you get your first partner? Because you said we started off with 2. How did that 2 come together? And then the second question was, you just said it. You said it didn't happen fast. So when that consistency happened, when did you start, and then when did you get to consistency?
Mhm.
But
So
when did you and the two get together? How did you get together?
so we started. This was a little bit after I graduated college, right? We were both interested in the real estate business.
Okay.
We were already friends and understood a little bit, about each other at the time, and we went into it. We were new for the partnering aspect at that time, but we knew that we both were dedicated to the cause, right? So we said, "Hey, let's go on YouTube, learn a little bit about this, watch these videos, take notes, and then put some money together and start doing it." And that's how we started. And what I would give advice for somebody that's looking to partner up with earlier on, look for somebody that complements who you are, right? If you're somebody that's not good at, organization, or you're not good at talking on the phone or something like that, find somebody that loves to talk and maybe super organized, right? And then you complement their needs. And then from there, you guys sit down and kind of map out how you want to start off your business, or what you want to make the main focus when you initially start to grow. And then you just, hit it from there. I wouldn't focus too much on having everything right. I would just focus on understanding what is the first step you guys want to take, and how can I maximize my effort for that first step. If I say my first step is, in these next 2 weeks, I want to network with 10 top investors in the market, figure out what they need, and if I'm able to help them out, then make that the metric, and then go full throttle to try to get those 10 people as fast as you can, right? And then to answer your second question of that, how was it a process? I think a lot of it came to when you starting to make mistakes consistently, right? And you're able to, take a step back and review them with your partner and kind of analyze what's the main driver and contributing to why you guys are, repeating the cycle. Then you really start to make some changes. And I think for us, it was probably while we were about a year in, almost about a year in, we started realizing a lot of the same patterns. And it's like, okay, well, we keep on meeting this issue. That means we must be doing something wrong, right? And so we sat down, we looked at it like we either need mentorship from somebody who's doing these deals, or we need to revisit how we're attacking this. And the first thing we did was reach out to some people who were part of Sub 2, or reach out to people who were doing deals in the area. And we kind of learned some tactics about what we were doing wrong or what we could have shifted up, to start being more, progressive and more successful in our business. So it's not always the fastest. It happens for different people at different times. But I think the main thing in catching that and figuring out how to make that turnaround time faster is that you want to constantly be evaluating yourself, right? Constantly be evaluating yourself. If you're somebody that says, hey, I want to start a business, I want to go full throttle on real estate, I want to do these deals. Even if you're new, you can still hold yourself accountable to certain metrics or certain goals, and then review your progress from that point. And I would make that time, that half-life, as small as possible, to where you can still get something accomplished, right? And that way you're not extending that timeline for making changes so it's too far in the future. You want to, take your first steps. 2 weeks after that, sit back and say, okay, cool. What have I done? Right? Did I get all my goals accomplished? Did I meet all those numbers? All right. If I didn't, what do I think was the biggest contributor to not meeting those? And then, do I have the tools necessary to find this answer? If I don't, I need to find somebody that does. If I don't know that person, I'm going to put it out there and say, hey, this is an issue I'm dealing with. I know somebody in here knows how to solve this. Can you help me? I guarantee you're going to find at least one person that says, hey, I've done that a million times. You got a deal we can work on? Let's do it. And that's how you do it. And that's how you hold yourself accountable, right? Because you want to make sure that you're taking them, like, nobody wants to waste time doing any of this stuff, right? We're all getting older, right? So we want to make sure that we're taking a look at our progress and making sure that we're on the right steps.
Man, Emeka, talking about some gold nuggets, brother. You were throwing down some serious value. Serious value. Um, Now, one last question happened to come from a young man named Olu. His question is, how do you get buyers to pay higher prices?
Oh, we handcuff them, but no. What we do, um, it's really. I hate to keep going back to the same things, but this just shows how important a lot of these underlying fundamental things are about this business: relationships, transparency, and attention to detail. Right? If you have a buyer that you've vetted out, you know what he's looking for. You guys are on the same page, you have a good relationship, you communicate well, you're transparent about where you are in the buyer process. It's so much easier to go back to that person and say, hey, JJ, listen, man, I know we've been going back and forth about this deal right now, but I got to be honest with you. I got 4 other guys here that are looking at this property. They're all putting in the same offer. Can you work with me a little bit? Maybe we can get up to this amount. If you're able to do that, let's get a deal done. Otherwise we got to kind of feel these offers out and see what we can get. Now, of course, you're always going to get pressure, right, from that buyer to sell that deal to them, right? Because that's their job, right? It's almost like you're a stockbroker or something. You're in there waving your hand, hey, we want to bid that, we want to do this, or you're at an auction. I want the car. I want to do 10,000, 15,000, right? They want that product. And so they're going to want to be as savvy as they can to get you to sell it to them or get them exclusive access, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, you have a business to run, right? And so you want to make sure that you're strict on your business guidelines and you're giving your team the best opportunity to win. And the reason why I say that is because, for us, we have a process of how we dispo a deal. When we put a deal out, we're getting people to come to the property. We're not going to accept an offer from a buyer that hasn't seen the property and hasn't done their due diligence. Why? Is because no matter how much I may love this guy, he may be a great guy, we had a ton of fun. This is my process, right? And if anything were to happen where I sign with him and then he's unpleased with the deal 2 days later and wants to back out, then it's like, oh, well, that doesn't do us any good because we could have gone with the person that was ready to go, that had seen the property already, that was full throttle and didn't have any issues with it. And you're not going to know know the outcome of those situations until you've made that mistake or done it. And believe me, I've made a lot of mistakes in the Dispo world. I've, sold deals to buyers that I thought were going to close and didn't close. I've, signed contracts with guys who ended up backing out days after or days before the closing deadline comes. And a lot of, being able to be flexible with your buyer offers and getting them to get that higher price is just letting them know where you're at with the deal and just letting them know, like, hey, like, as much as I like you, like, this is our process. This is how we dispo our deals. But if you can work with me and, come a little bit higher than where we're at our baseline, we may be able to, expedite a deal here. And then also offering a little bit more of an incentive sometimes. Maybe you only have one buyer, right? And there's not a bidding war going on. And you want to see if you can squeeze a little bit more money out that deal. You come to him, you say, hey, man, let's get this deal done. I have another deal lined up. I think that may be, something you may want to pick up as well. You work with me, maybe come a little bit high on this one. We got another deal that we can get closed here right after that I think you'll be interested in. Provide some value for them that they're going to want, right? Ultimately, somebody who's buying properties, they're buying properties for a reason. Is because they don't want to do what you're doing. That's another thing that people got to understand. Buyers are buyers for a reason. If I'm a buyer, I don't want to be on the phone talking to a seller for 8 hours a day trying to get them locked up on the contracts, because that doesn't do my business any good, right? If I'm a flipper, I flip houses. I, don't want to be spending time negotiating numbers. I don't want to be spending time finding my own deals. I want to buy them and then make my money from flipping. So when you understand, what that main person's objective is of being in the business, and how to provide value for that, then it makes it so much easier to kind of negotiate a way to get either more money or, maybe say, hey, we can't work with you on this deal, but we may give you a discount on the next one, just in case, So you get that stuff done by building a strong relationship, making sure they understand how you run your business, and they're going to respect that.
Um, I want to thank you for being on today, boy. You've really dropped some serious nuggets here. I know we've had some good questions. Hey, I wanted to ask you two things before we wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
One, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to go about that? Is it your MySpace page? Is it your Snapchat, TikTok?
MySpace, right? I'm gonna go back to 7th grade. Yeah, follow me on Instagram. My Instagram tag is Wealth with E. Always looking at ways to help people joint venture on deals. There's a link in my bio there. Get some time on the calendar with me for a discovery call.
Instagram is going to be the best way for people to get a hold of you.
Absolutely. Instagram or on Facebook as well.
My last question before we part is, my group's a networking group, and I don't talk about the aspects of the transaction or the fundamentals of those things as much as I talk about the relationships. And from your standpoint, being a successful investor, there are multiple education platforms across the country for real estate education. Subto is one of those. And we have new and experienced investors, brand new investors and experienced investors coming to these educational platforms such as Subto. And they're using now Facebook for the first time, social media for the first time, in developing their business from a real estate investment standpoint. In your opinion, what's the importance for these new investors, experienced or brand new, of using social media, Facebook to build their business? What's the importance of networking to build their business?
Networking is probably, if not number one, but something should be in the top 5, top 3 things you want to do. Especially if you're somebody that's new to the point where you only have a vision of what you want to do, or maybe you know what you want to do, but you don't know how to get there, right? You don't know how to get there. You know for a fact you want to be here, but you need help in finding that pathway to get to your trajectory. Networking is so important. Networking is so important because it puts you in rooms that you typically wouldn't have put yourself in before. It gets you exposed to a lot more things that contribute to your journey. Before we really started networking with mentorships and people who were doing deals in the area, we were kind of siloed in our own box and just focused on, oh, we got to crank out all these calls, do this. And you get burned out really quickly doing that stuff. And not only that, but sometimes you're working so hard that you don't really see from an outside view of what you need to change or what you need to do to get to the next point. So networking kind of, it gives you understanding of where you really are compared to how people see you. And then also, puts you in rooms that allows people to, provide some value to you. And the next thing I would say is for people that are starting that journey on social media is that really, no matter how rudimentary or crude it is, document it. Just put it out there, because ultimately it's going to relate to somebody. And that's something that I even need to, that's even advice to myself, because there's always room to grow in that space. But, people really respond to seeing somebody that they're in a similar situation with do something that they've thought about, right? So maybe somebody is, has a similar job to you or is a similar age, and they're unsure about their pathway in real estate, but they see you struggling and failing forward and making it work, and then you hit a breakthrough, right? Now they're your biggest fan because they say, "Oh my gosh, like this person, they just started documenting this stuff by what they were doing on a daily basis, and then it turns out now they're doing deals. Like I'm like this guy." And now you have somebody that is, following you because they're in the same position. So networking and just putting yourself out there, like a lot of us, maybe kind of shy, maybe hard to do that at first, but that's really what's going to take it to the next level.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to say, if you guys are watching on YouTube right now, if you guys are watching Emeka's video or presentation today, please like Emeka's video. Please put in the notes there on YouTube what your takeaways were, what you found to be informative about the call. If you guys are on the call right now, please go back and like this video, like all the videos there. It's going to help the YouTube channel, but it's also going to be beneficial for our guest speakers. And if you want to connect with myself, let's go to my webpage, jjazizian.com. Click the little pulse button that says register now, gets into the networking group. Look for more videos coming up with Flip Setup with JJ. Please look for this video if you're on the call right now, coming up very, very soon, back out to our YouTube channel. And if you're watching on YouTube, continue to look for more great speakers coming up from, within the real estate environment, the real estate education community. Emeka, thank you so much, brother, for coming on today. Really appreciate it. If you guys are on the call, don't go away. We probably got a couple more questions, do some live networking. And I guess, Emeka, for everybody else, we'll just see them down the line, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
See you guys soon. Thank you so much.